Like the rest of you, we're trying to make sense of this crazy thing that we call life. I'm RJ,
I'm Khalil.
and welcome to Try Not to Overthink It. Every day we find ourselves discussing many different topics, ranging from trending news to the state of our society as a whole. You name it, we've probably talked about it. After many heated debates, we decided to expand and share our conversations with you and give them to you from the standpoint of both a therapist as well as social worker. If this is your first time here, I'd like to say thank you for checking us out. We ask that you participate in the conversation and become part of the tribe, as well as share these conversations with other people. So today, what we are going to talk about is starting new habits. With the beginning of a new year, a lot of us tend to do what is called New Year's resolutions, where we map out what we want for ourselves for the new year.
Right.
For a lot of us, we tend to think that going into a new year is going to be a new me. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say that, this year is going to be this year is going to be that. And then when the rubber meets the road, we kind of get comfortable and we fall back into things that we've always done. And then the following year is going to be the year, and the year after that is going to be the year, and the year after that is going to be the year. And then before you know, you look up and you haven't really accomplished any of the goals that you set for yourself. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to unpack that, and we're really going to talk about breaking habits, breaking cycles, breaking chains, and growing from those things. Because even failure, you can learn from it. So Khalil, do you want me to start off, or did you want to start it off?
Yeah, hey, definitely. You can start it off because I think you touched on a lot of good topics there, especially when we're talking about changing some of these habits that we have and not bringing them into the new year. Whether it be smoking, whether it be cussing, whether it be drinking, whether it be lying, whatever the habit is that you've gotten yourself into, definitely this is the time where we can stick to a New Year's resolution and start changing things, but little by little. I think a lot of the reasons why people fail, RJ, is because they try to do it all at one time. So please, I want you to open up on that.
So for me, I like to read a lot of self-help stuff because, again, me as a practitioner, I always look to be the best version of myself. And so in order to be the best version of myself, I have to go and seek knowledge that is going to propel me to that next level. So I will go and sit down with other people, especially people that I admire or people who are in places that I want to be, or have behaviors or have things that I wish to emulate myself.
Right.
And then I will also surround myself with material, regardless if that's books, if that's an audio file, a podcast, a video of certain people. And so one of the particular people that I came across was Dave Martin. And he said that the best way to neutralize bad habits in your life is to form better habits to replace them.
Right.
And, I felt that was really profound to me because, again, like for a lot of us, we tend to not realize that in order to make room in our lives for newer things, we have to eliminate other things.
Right.
So if you are in, say, we'll use relationships because that's always been something that we've talked about on this platform. So if you're in order to make room for a fruitful and beneficial relationship, you got to cut out the toxic ones or the ones that are maladaptive to you. And so for me, what he was saying there, basically if there's something that you want to improve, you got to replace it with something better, or something that you need to improve upon, you got to replace it with something better. And one of the things that I work on with my clients all the time, especially for my clients who have really bad habits, rather that be non-compliance with treatment or substance abuse or being aggressive with other people, one of the things that I always work on them is the habit swap chart. So the way that the chart works is 3 columns. And so the first column is the habit I want to change. The middle column is what it gives me. And then the third column is a new habit that I'm going to replace it with.
Right.
So for a lot of us, we all have bad habits, regardless if we realize it or not. So say for a lot of us, when we interact with other people, first thing that we want to do, for a lot of us when we first wake up in the morning is get on our phone. I want to get on the phone. I want to check to see if someone's liked my share on Instagram, or see if someone's liked my picture on Facebook, or something I shared on Snapchat or TikTok. And, for a lot of us, that's the habit we need to change. So then you go into what it gives me. It gives you a connection to other people. So what is a new habit that you can cycle in to replace that bad habit of immediately waking up and getting on your phone? So one of the new habits that you could do is get up and pray first thing in the morning.
Right. Right. Give thanks.
Um, get up and journal first thing in the morning.
Right.
Get up and exercise first thing in the
Exercise,
morning.
right? Which
Like
nobody wants to hear that, but yes.
all three of those things are things that are, positive and that are constructive that will help prepare you for the day that is to come.
Right.
Because they all help to kind of get your mind, your body, your soul together, and help get you prepared for what is going to come from the day. And I think that for a lot of us, again, habits, like my dad always says, are like feet. They don't get any smaller.
Right.
They get bigger and bigger and bigger, as they keep going. And so for a lot of us, like before we realize it, if we don't kill the habit, if we don't dead the habit, we don't get rid of the habit, eventually the habit has a way of killing you or overcoming you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in agreement. I love the fact that a lot of people don't they don't understand what you're talking about when it comes to replacement, right? It's one of those things when I talk to clients, right, especially in the substance abuse area, which is the field that I work in. The funniest thing is when I tell them, I said, "Well, you stop drinking. What'll happen?" And I'm telling them what's going to happen is usually the brain, who has this magnificent supercomputer in it, always decides to continue to get that feeling, but use some other avenue to do it, right? So it's like, hey, well, I stopped drinking, but the reason why I was drinking because I was trying to obtain a feeling, right? Mood altering or mind altering chemical or substance, right? So next thing you know, the person will sometimes get involved in exercise, right? Actually, they'll usually overdo it because they want
Mm-hmm.
that stimulation, they want that feeling, right? Or they'll substitute with another drug, whether it be pills, whether it be marijuana, whether it be, any other substance that they can try to get that feeling from, right? Overspending, they can get a high from that, becoming shopping addicts. So it's so funny because I think a lot of people take it for granted, but that's what the brain wants to do. All right, because it's so used to getting that gratification, right? And you've been creating that euphoric feeling. The brain is like, I need to get that from somewhere else, right? So, boom, it'll cause something else. Well, usually you'll find something else to substitute that feeling for, right? Well, the same thing comes with our habits because those are habits as well, right? And you're going to need to find something else to replace it, but something healthy. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to people like, well, I don't drink anymore. I just drink a lot of coffee now. Like caffeine is overstimulation, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
caffeine receptors in your brain are going crazy because you're drinking 10 cups a day. There's a problem, right? So we want to find something else to put into it. One of my favorite books I read back in the day when I was in my graduate school was a book by B.J. Fogg. He's a Stanford professor, and it was called Tiny Habits, right? And so he goes off the tenets of the 21-day rule to break a habit, right? Takes 21 days. They used to have 28 days was the theory. It's 21 days to break a habit, right? But he wanted you, in order to break this big habit, whether it be, like I said, smoking, drinking, lying, masturbation, whatever that huge habit is, right? He'd put small things in the way. So during that time that you would usually do whatever that behavior is, he'd start instituting something small, all right, during that time. And eventually you'll put two or three small things in that time period, whether it be before I go to sleep, instead of taking a drink, I'll read a book or read a
Mm-hmm.
paragraph out of a book, a small paragraph out of a book, or I'll decide to clean my room at that time. I'll organize my shoes at that time and do that every day. Do that every day. And it starts to take away from that time that you usually spend doing whatever that habit was. It could be picking your nose, whatever it is. You do something else in between, a small tiny thing you add in there, whether it be brushing your teeth, whether it be flossing your teeth or picking your ears, whatever that is, you add that into that time you're doing that habit that you want to break. And eventually you'll be able to break the habit, which was crazy for me, but I didn't understand what he was doing. All right. It's that same substitution theory. And I think a lot of people want to take on, especially when it comes to New Year's, right? We want to take on that resolution and we want to jump off, jump into it, jump into the water and just get reckless with it. If I want to quit smoking, if I decide to throw that pack out the window that day, all right, I might get stressed out. By the later that afternoon, I'm going to buy another pack of cigarettes, right? So I don't tell, when I talk to people about quitting smoking, I don't tell them just to quit right there and there, right? It's usually take steps, taper yourself off, small steps. Well, you know what? I'm going to try to smoke 4 cigarettes today or 5 cigarettes today, whatever it is. Start scaling it back so you can change your habits. Instead of smoking every time I take a cup of coffee in the morning, I'll smoke in the afternoon. Try to start changing up some of these habits that we have. Tiny little changes like that will lead to larger changes. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, RJ, because I think a lot of people, they want to tackle it and go full on into it for the New Year's. And if you think you're going to exercise 7 days in a row, your body's going to be so sore because it's not used to doing that. After that 3rd day, or maybe even 2nd day, you probably throw your back out. You got to start small.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like for a lot of us, because we see the beginning of the year means new start. And so new start means new me. And so for a lot of us, you don't have to be, as you said, you don't have to be extreme. You just have to be consistently consistent and disciplined.
Yes.
And even for me as a person that, I try to hold myself to, a regimented way of living. And the reason I try to do that is because, again, when I didn't have structure and discipline in place, I was wild. And so being wild, I got into trouble. I did things I wasn't supposed to do. Certain blessings were blocked.
Right.
Certain bags were fumbled. So for me, growing, maturing, and evolving, I had to kind of break certain cycles. So to break certain cycles, I had to put things in place. And so for me, what helped me was I go by, 3 rules. 1, I have to stop and contemplate. What do I need to change and why? 2, map out what that change looks like. And so what you kind of have to ask yourself is, how can I subtract or get rid of the clutter or the thing that I'm trying to overcome? 3, set the goal. And, and then what that looks like is, keeping in mind, what is going to keep me focused? What's going to keep me motivated? What's going to keep me on track? What's going to keep me hungry? Those are things that I use to kind of keep myself on track.
Right.
Now, again, that was easier. That's far easier said than done. Because it's easy for me to say that as a person on this side of it. But when I was in college and even before that, when I was in high school, again, I was on this side of it. And so there were a lot of hard life lessons that I had to run into to recognize that not having discipline, not having consistency, not having the self-motivation, because I was motivated as long as somebody else was telling me what to do. But what happens when that person's not there anymore?
Right.
Now I got to motivate myself.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that my dad has always said, time and time again, games and war and battle is won in the practices and the rehearsals that nobody sees.
Right.
So regardless if someone is there, regardless if someone is telling you to do something, regardless if someone's standing over you, you have to be disciplined enough to execute the lessons that you were given. And so for a lot of us, what we tend to do is we tend to, this one lady that I follow on Instagram, her name is Shelly Netco. She's a life coach. And she says, stop repeating patterns and calling them fate.
Right.
And for a lot of us, we will do that. And I hate when I hear people say, well, God didn't want me to have that.
Right.
It wasn't for me because God didn't intend for me to have it and da-da-da-da-da-da. But it's like, we got to stop blaming external things as the reason why we are where we're at.
Right.
For a lot of us, we are at where we are at because of us, because of our lack of discipline, our lack of consistency, our lack of investment of effort and energy. And so we have to take accountability. And that is the biggest thing with setting new goals, breaking old habits, is accountability. I have to be accountable to myself.
Yes.
If I don't do X, Y, and Z, what is going to happen?
Right.
If I don't hold myself accountable, I tend to revert back to old habits and bad behaviors that got me in trouble, that kept me from being the best version of ourselves. Because like for me, being a nerd, if you can't tell by the glasses, by the glasses and some of the jokes that I make and even some of the clothes that I wear, I'm a nerd. And so for me, I always, I kind of look at, and, as an artist, I like to draw and I like to paint. And so I always look at things like a comic book story or an anime or a manga. And so for a lot of us, the reason our habits are delaying us from being the best version of ourselves. They're holding us up. Because I was on Instagram the other day and I saw that good habits time an ally for you, and bad habits make an enemy of time for you. Right. And for a lot of us, our bad habits keep us from reaching our goals. They tie us up, they weigh us down, and they get in the way of us actually self-actualizing. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those New Year's resolutions you set for yourself, again, the bad habits are what are keeping you from being the new you in the new year. Right. And so it becomes one of those things where it becomes a battle with yourself.
It is.
There is no external battle. It's an internal battle with yourself, because again, I have to battle with myself to decide, what do I want for myself? Do I want to continue on in the next year with the same foolishness, the same mess, the same BS, or do I want to move into a new year, moving in the purpose that is mapped out for me, the purpose that I see for myself, the purpose that God has for me, the purpose that I'm supposed to be moving in? Like, those are things that you have to ask yourself. Like, as a provider, one of the things that I always ask my clients all the time, it doesn't matter what anybody else is saying. I don't care what your mama say. I don't care what your husband is saying, what your wife is saying. I don't even care what other members of my treatment team are saying in regards to what's important to you. I need to hear from you. What do you want to do?
Yeah. What do you want out of this? Right.
What do you want out of this? Because until you want this, there's no amount of anybody else externally wanting it that is going to elicit a change until you want it. Short of God putting something on your heart to change, a life-altering experience, like a come to Jesus moment, like you almost died, like, oh my God, my life flashed before my eyes, I'm ready to change. Until you reach that point to where you say enough is enough, and I'm tired of my own foolishness, and I want to grow, and I want to be the best version of myself. Until you decide that I want this, there's nothing anybody else can do.
Right. Well, RJ, what you were mentioning earlier and throughout for the last 5 minutes is people not recognizing what's happening to them. All right. Or that locus of control idea, right? Well, are things happening to me, or am I making things happen? Right. When you're stuck in one of those cycles, because it's a rough situation. I see it often in substance abuse, working in that field, but also I've saw it in myself, right? When you're stuck in a vicious cycle and you can't get out and it becomes repetitive, then all of a sudden we take that victimization, right? Well, all these people are doing something to me. No, this is when you have to be accountable. If you want to change something, right? You start making things happen. And I think that's what you were talking about, like being really conscious about some of these decisions we're making. Like, if I want to change something, right? All right. And I want to make sure that my life is going to be different, then I'm going to have to take the first step. Because if I know this is not what I want out of life, I don't like the situation I'm in, it's on me to start changing. Some of those steps are changing some of these habits. And I love what you said, that lady said. I forgot what was her name. The lady that you've been watching, the self-help motivation lady, what she was talking about.
Shelley Netco.
Yes.
She said, stop repeating patterns and calling them fate.
Right. We get caught up into that, man, because we've learned it from some of our ancestors, some of our relatives. They'll tell you, well, it was fate. This is just God. God wants you to have the abundant life. God does not withhold anything from his children. I don't know if people get caught up in this. Like I said, it's a cycle. When bad things continue, usually you got to start looking at some of your habits, some of the things that you're doing. And I'm one of those people because I've seen it with my own two eyes. All right. I kept going when I was on substances. I kept going to the drug strips. I kept going to hang around people who were dealers, users, all sorts of stuff like that. Man, I racked up so many charges in my 20s. My mom was like, "What is wrong with you?" Well, it was the people I was around.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always be like, "Well, people are doing stuff to me." Well, no, I probably shouldn't have been around those people. I shouldn't have been hanging in strip clubs. Shouldn't have been hanging at nightclubs. I shouldn't have been hanging around people who were who were armed and dangerous. I shouldn't have been doing those things, right? Because that wasn't even me. But to use the substances, to hang around those type of people, I was glorifying that life. All right, I kept getting in trouble, and I was like, oh man, these people keep getting me in trouble. No, it was me. I would be in the wrong places. In order to break those cycles, you're going to have to recognize that the part that you play in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when people don't want to do that, I've worked with clients, and I'm like, well, the reason why you're in and out of court, or you keep messing up with the judge, or you lost custody of your kids, those are your decisions you made.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to keep repeating the cycle. We've talked about that in previous episodes. Mothers and daughters, both of them that I've dealt with, had kids, all right, when they were 15 or 16. You don't have to, if you saw your mom go through that struggle, all right, and grandma had to step up and do everything because you couldn't do it, right? And then you go ahead and repeat the cycle, well, then there's something wrong there because you got to see it play out because you were a part of it, but yet you did it again, right? So that means that we have to make a change. That's on me. If I can't say anybody did anything to me at that point because I saw it. I lived it. So you're supposed to break that. Well, I'm going to do something opposite of what my mother did or what my grandmother did. I have to do something. And that's when we start by changing some of these habits. You know what I mean? Being lying with people out of wedlock. And I'm not preaching here, right? I'm just talking about that's an answer to break some of those cycles that are generational,
Mm-hmm.
right? All right. I'm not going to commit to being in some relationship with somebody who doesn't want to marry me.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we break some of those. And that's a small, tiny decision. That's not even a large decision, really. It's just like, you know what? That man, he just wants to date me. You know what? That's probably all he'll ever do. I'm going to have to go ahead and look for someone who wants to marry me. These are small little decisions you make. And it's hard in the moment because, when you're caught in battle and you're in the heat of the moment, all you can see, you have to move off of instinct because all you can see is the person coming at you. You know what I mean? Unless you bouncing from side to side or back to back, all you can see is what's coming up forward. You can't see what's behind you. And so you're going to have to be hyper vigilant. You have to be alert. So when you're caught up in that, especially in life, with the way things come at us in life, you're going to have to start preparing yourself, and you're going to have to take a pause and stop making decisions so quickly. You're going to have to really take a break and say, hold up, things are coming at me too fast. Let me take a break and let me take an aerial view. Because once I can see what's going on around me and I can look at all the different things going on in life, I'm going to make better decisions, but I got to take a break. I got to take a pause because if you're stuck and you're trying to make things off of instinct, you'll probably be doing the same thing over and over again in this war that we are in life. This is so difficult. And I've seen it with my own life. I've seen it with other people. You'll keep making the same mistakes over and over again if you don't take a step back and really analyze what's going on in your life. And you can do that with a clinician. I'm not telling you, and you can do that with a person who has some good knowledge. You can do that with a lot of people, but I'm not even telling you to do that. It's some introspection that needs to go on. I'm telling you to do that with yourself. Take a break. Move yourself from that relationship. If it feels horrible, take a break, take a time out. And I think people get scared, like all of a sudden, life is going to stop because you took a pause. Now the world's still spinning. You know,
Well,
things are still going to happen if you take a time out.
I think that for a lot of us, just the fear of the unknown is what keeps a lot of people in place, and keeps them in poor habits. Um, we and I spoke about this in previous episodes. Like for a lot of us, the habits that we form are based off of choices. It
Right.
stops being like you were saying about mistakes. It stops being a mistake after like the second time. Then at that point, it's a decision. You made a choice. You made a choice to go
Conscious
right or go
decision.
left.
Right.
It wasn't like it was a coin flip or a dice roll. You made a conscious decision to either continue to smoke, continue to be in this relationship that's not going in a particular direction that you want it to go in, continue to live an unhealthy lifestyle, continue to not work out. Like those are choices.
Right.
Now again, it's not a roll of the dice or a coin flip. You made a yes or a no decision there. And so for a lot of us, we tend to move in things that are comfortable to us.
Right.
What's always been comfortable to me is what I'm always going to do. What's easiest for me is what I'm always going to do. It's like being a good person. If being a good person was easy, there'd be no crime.
Right.
There'd be no violence. We would love each other. We would take care of each other. There'd be no poverty. But again, being a resolute, honest, steadfast person is very difficult. So because it's very difficult, because we as human beings are innately selfish at times, we prioritize our wants, our needs over the needs of the community around us. So because of those things, again, that's why we experience crime. That's why we experience violence. That's why we experience poverty.
Right.
But, again, the easy decision is not always the right decision. A lot of times the hard decision
Decisions.
is the right decision. But for a lot of us, it boils down to the amount of effort and time and energy we are willing to put into something to see a change, to see ourselves graduate or matriculate to the next level. Like there's no shortcuts. There is no shortcuts. There's not going to be any cheat codes. I can tell you that, let you guys in on a trader secret. The secret code, the secret sauce, the cheat code, whatever you want to call it, to your destiny and purpose is your daily routine.
Right.
What you do every single day is going to help you manifest things in your life. So if you get up every day and you constantly work every single day to be a good person, you'll be a good person. If you get up every single day with the mindset of I'm going to get up and I'm going to work out, guess what? You'll be in shape.
Right.
If you get up every single day and you put forth the effort to cut out smoking, beat your addiction, whatever it may be, you will eventually be successful in that. But that comes from being consistently consistent and being disciplined.
Right. The term auto suggestion, and that's saying things over and over to yourself or to another person to suggest in their mind, all right, that you want to achieve this certain objective, right? And I know for a fact that it's worked because it's worked for centuries, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I continually tell myself I want to get in shape and I get up and I start walking and jogging every day, in 3 or 4 months, my body's going to start to look different. I'm going to start to feel different.
Mm-hmm.
In turn, then that's that self-efficacy. I can do this. I'm being successful at losing weight. I'm being successful at putting my body in shape. Because it's not always about losing weight. It's about putting your body in shape, right? Getting tone or whatever that case is, right? And you start doing it more and more, and you get better at it, right? The same thing if I'm working with my spouse, right? I start telling my spouse that they're a wonderful human being, that they're a blessing to be around me, that I love them, that I want to keep them around me, and I want them to be the best that they can be. And I'm building them up. That's auto-suggestion. And I'm saying this over and over and over to them, right? Eventually, they are going to start to produce fruit. They are going to start to think, hey, my spouse looks up to me. They really appreciate me. So I'm not going to do those negative things that I used to do, right? I'm going to make a change. That's what we do when we start to operate on a higher mental plane and a higher spirituals plane. If I want to change things, I have to start to talk to myself. And it's not craziness. People walk around like, yeah, I don't mean talking to myself like I'm walking down the street, like, sure, I want some McDonald's. All right, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about building myself up in the early morning when I get up. I need to be thankful for what's going on right now. I don't care what the conditions you're in, what type of situation you're in. All right, get up and be thankful. All right, and be content with whatever's going on.
Because it could always be worse.
It could always be worse, right? And then from that point on, start to tell yourself. And I used to write these things out, the things that I needed to do. I need to get back to doing that. I write my stuff out. I say, well, you know what? Today I need to do this, and to be regimented, to make sure that in my mind I put these things there. All right. I need to save money because at times I didn't have a vehicle or a reliable vehicle. I need to save money because I want to get a vehicle, or I need to save money because I want to get a new house. I need to, whatever it was, you write these things out. Tell yourself these things. All right. I am going to get a better job. You know what I mean? I deserve a better job. Make sure that you're working on certain qualities that you need to get this job. All right. If you need to go back to school, start enrolling. Do whatever you have to do. Tell yourself, write out a plan. Tell yourself what you want to do. These are the small steps that people, I think sometimes they take for granted. These are what changed my habits. When I'm grateful, I'm thankful, and I'm content with what I have, but also I'm having these plans that I do want more. And I know that God will bring these in my life once I'm doing the things that are necessary to get to that level. There's certain things you have to do. RJ talked about goals earlier. I write these out. These are goals. Every step, all right, a SMART goal pattern, y'all have heard me talk about that, is small steps to get to the larger goal. Why aren't we doing this? And these are one of these things where if I want to change something, if I want something to matriculate or I want something to manifest in my life, I really have to start making these goals and taking these steps to achieve these goals, telling myself that I'm going to do these things. That's how I when I used to really struggle on obtaining things, these are some of the things I didn't do. I didn't write out my goals. All right. I didn't go to work with the mindset that I'm thankful that I have a job and I know God's going to get me a better job. I didn't go to that, mind state like that. I'd be like, man, this is show up at this stupid job again. There I go. These people don't do nothing for me. These people are worthless. My coworkers suck. That's the type of mindset that I would go to work with, but I would expect blessings in that same environment that I'm cursing. I done cursed everybody out. The copier, my boss, in my mind. This is what I'm doing in my mind. Obviously, I wouldn't have been working if I was doing it in actuality, but I'm doing this in my mind. I'm cursing everything around me, right? And then I wonder why good things aren't happening, right? But when I'm building my mind up, like, hey, this is my job, but this is just temporary. I know something better is going to come along. All right. I'm preparing myself for something better. That's why I'm doing this job. I'm coming in here and I'm going to bless other people. I'm going to do what's necessary to help people around me in order to set myself up for what God has in store for me later on. And I'm not preaching, I'm not getting religious, but it's that positive self-worth, that positive motivation that I have to put in my head, else I'm going to walk around and I'm a curse. I'm just as human as anybody else. I had a patient say to me the other day, he said, Khalil, you always smiling. Well, what he doesn't know is I've been on the other side where I could not smile. There was nothing to smile about. And I wasn't thankful. I wasn't grateful that I had my life. Man, if you have your life, you have your health, you can walk and talk, man, the next day is always a day where things can get better. You always can get back. I've had to hit the reset button so many times in my life, it's ridiculous. We need to bring my mom on the show so she can tell you. There's been times where I was completely bankrupt. All right. I had to beg my mother, who at the time, she was taking care of herself. She'd been divorced for years. I had to beg her to come get me. You know what I mean? No vehicle, no nothing. I was like, man, I'm gonna have to restart, mom. I'm gonna have to restart. I'm at my wit's end, and she would come get me, and I'd reset. All right. People don't understand. I know about moving across states. All right, with no money or using my money to move and then having to restart. All right, humbling myself. Like I was 30 years old, moving back in mom's house. Right, humbling myself. Right, resetting, restarting. But I had to do it with a positive outlook because I know I failed and the failure part was rough, but I had to build myself back up. I said, I'm going to reset and I'm going to do this and I'm going to put in as much effort as I can to get out of this situation, to make my life better. I had to write out these goals. I had to get up and be intentional, all right, about blessing and being thankful to God for having my life. All right, because like I said, if you can walk and talk and you got your 2 feet, some people do it with no arms. You can still be successful. You can do things and you can change the narrative of what's going on in your life currently. Every day is a blessing because I can get up and I can make something happen. This is when you no longer are acting like everything's happening to you when you start making things happen. I'm going to make something happen. Especially for you all who are struggling with finances. Man, I had to work 2 jobs for a long time. RJ knows that, but it blessed me. I worked 2 jobs. People be like, how you work? Sometimes 3. People are like, how are you doing this? Let me tell y'all something. This is a testimony. I worked at a substance abuse center part-time and I worked at the mental health center. Later on, after, I started getting my little degrees and all that, you know what I mean? I started working at different jobs and I still maintain connection with some of these part-time jobs. Do you know, last year when I was unemployed because I had a layoff, my old job that I worked at 5 years ago called me because I had a good relationship with these people and offered me a position. I didn't even apply. I didn't do anything. They called me. I had talked to a lady, I kept in good standings with her. I talked to her. I told her about my situation. She said, you know what? I was just thinking about you the other day. And I was like, what? Yeah, she said, yeah, I got a job for you. All right. They called me, scheduled the interview, and I got the job the next week. All right. But the craziest thing was people used to tell me, why are you working 2, 3 jobs? I don't know. I said, I have to do this. I'm trying to motivate myself. I said, I'm trying to learn something. I'm trying to learn something. I want to learn about being in the substance abuse field. I want to learn about social work. I want to learn. And people used to make fun of me. They'd be like, you crazy, man, going to these 2 or 3 jobs. But when I had none, look who provided. You get what I'm saying? That's a testimony of sometimes, man, if you put in that extra effort, if you do some things, step out of your comfort zone. Sometimes you might need to work 2 jobs to get back. Because I just told y'all, I was homeless at 30, had to move back home with moms, going off a breakup with my ex-wife. You get what I'm saying? These are I had to hit the reset button. These are times when you do that, you have to look at yourself and say, you know what? I'm going to stop saying everybody's doing something to Khalil, and I'm going to go make things happen for Khalil. All right. Faith is an action word. I had to go out. I said, I don't got no money, but I'm going to make it happen. I got to work 2, 3 jobs for 2 years. Like I said, people clown me. They're like, man, did you sleep today? Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I didn't, but I know it was for something that I needed to do for my future. I had to do these things. And I'm not going to bore you all with some of the trivial things that happened to me, but I suffered. There was a lot of times where I didn't get a lot of sleep. There was a lot of times where I thought about quitting all these different jobs. But the thing is, when I went to grad school, a lot of people didn't have experience in the field. A lot of people didn't know about medications, medication compliance, stuff I learned from RJ and all these people. They didn't know about this, the different drugs and stuff. But because I had worked those 2, 3 jobs, I had learned about these things. And for me, it was easy once I went to grad school. The people would start talking about psychopharmacology and this and that. I would already know stuff. So it always worked out. Once I set my life goals and I start setting these goals and taking these small steps, it worked out for me in the end. So I know when we put this positive energy and we start being thankful and grateful and content good things will happen to you. Good things will happen.
For sure. I think that for a lot of us, we get caught up in the work that has to occur in order for the change to happen. And one of Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, he founded Taoism. He says that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Right.
You know, as long as you constantly keep moving and keep moving and you keep moving your feet, even if you're not moving your feet a whole lot, as long as you just keep moving your feet forward, eventually you'll get to where you're supposed to get to. And for a lot of us, because we get discouraged by the work and the effort that has to occur in order for the change to take place, we discourage ourselves. We'll talk ourselves out of the blessings that can be ours, or the achievements that can be obtained. For me, one of the things that I had to realize was that in order to be great at anything, there's sacrifice that has to be made. There's sacrifice that has to be made. There's effort that has to be put in. And in order to achieve overall goals, there's an amount of attention and time I have to be willing to put in on anything that I'm trying to do. Because for a lot of us, what we have to understand is where we are a year from now is a reflection about the things that we are doing right now.
Right.
The things that we are doing right now are setting us up for where we're supposed to be. It's going to open or close doors in your face. And so, like you were saying, because you had done certain things, there were certain doors that were open to you, certain avenues that were open to you. And had you not done those doors would have been closed in your face. And so for a lot of us, when it comes to the habits, the things that we choose to partake in, those things can open and or close doors in our face.
Yes.
The people that we surround ourselves with, they can add to those habits. They can magnify those habits. They can introduce those habits to us. Because for a lot of us, we picked up certain habits because we were around certain people.
Right.
We never had any thoughts of doing certain things, being certain ways, eating certain foods, participating in certain activities until we were around certain people.
Right.
And that is where, as I was saying in a previous episode about, the things that you allow into you and to be around you can start to become a negative influence on your life. And for a lot of us, we have to take accountability for where we're at and where we want to go. You got to take accountability in both directions,
Mm-hmm.
where I presently am at and where I want to go, because no one else is going to take accountability for either one of those 2 points.
Right.
I have to take accountability for this point and for this point. And in order to get from this point to this point, I have to be the one to put forth the effort. Now, again, when it comes to things, like working out, you can hire a personal trainer,
Right.
who is going to train you, who's going to call you to see if you're going to come to the session, who's going to try to motivate you. But again, you're only going to get out,
Right.
Exactly. Your input has a direct correlation to, the outcome. And for a lot of us, we want to do, as you said, the hard reset. Because if you take your phone, right, and you hold down the power button and you hold it down, it resets the phone.
Yeah.
Well, it turns the phone off, and you hold it down again, the phone turns back on. It restarts the phone. Same thing when you do that to your computer. If you hold down the power button on your computer, it forces your computer to go off. We, as human beings, because of the complications and the intricacies of our lives, that's not a feasible thing.
Right.
Now, there are going to be some things that you're going to be able to cut off wholesale and not really face any adverse reactions. But there are other things where you're going to have to slowly and steadily cut those things off if they are not contributing to you being the best version of yourself.
Right.
There has to be an analysis of your overall life to figure out what are things that you need in your life and what are things that you don't need. I think the person that pointed that out to me was Cherie, who we've had on the show before. Cherie talked about that. Like, I was in her office one day at work. We worked together, and I saw on her wall needs versus wants. And so some of the things that she had in the wants section, I'm like, why is that not a need? Like, money was a want. It wasn't a need. I was like, why is that not a need? She said, because you don't need money to survive. It's nice to have money,
right?
But a lot of people make it by just fine with no money. And I was like, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. And so we got to talking about that. And she was like, for me, that's what I work on my clients with, of fully vetting the things that they, because a lot of people have them, flip flopped where, wants are needs and needs are wants.
Right.
When you sit down and you map out all of the important things in your life, you start to realize, and when you unpack these things, you start to realize that the things that you're holding as a priority is not really
They're
a
not
priority.
no, 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 they're
And
not.
it's actually being a detriment for you to hold on to those things. It's actually being an impediment to hold on to those things. It's actually keeping you from being the best version of yourself to hold on to those things, to continue to, want to partake in those things or have those things in your life.
Right.
And so for me, as I said in the episode that we talked about purposively, and in moving purposively, I operate in a purposeful manner, meaning that you can't, if you're not contributing to my purpose or this does not align in my purpose, you can't be part of this show,
Right.
because access to you is a privilege. It's not a right. And a lot of people have that confused. They think that being around you being around other people, that's a right. It's not.
Right.
So if things can't, add and multiply in your life, they're going to divide and subtract out of it. And so when it comes to habits, when it comes to changing, when it comes to growing, because that is what changing your habits is, it's growing. When you're talking about becoming a new you, you think of it like a caterpillar and a butterfly. The caterpillar turns into the butterfly. It grows into the butterfly. It's a caterpillar. It eats. It cocoons itself in a chrysalis. While it's in the chrysalis, that's its time to reflect, contemplate, nourish itself. And while it's in there, it's not just in there just taking a nap.
Mm-hmm.
It's in there growing. It's in there
Changing.
changing. So when
Right.
that chrysalis, that cocoon pops open, the butterfly comes out. Now,
Right.
who it was before it went into the cocoon is not who it was when it came out the cocoon.
Right.
And so for a lot of us, it is very possible for us to turn into a butterfly and be something different than what we used to be.
Right.
But there is amount, like I said, with the caterpillar, there's effort that goes into reaching that phase.
Mm-hmm.
He went into, he knew what he was supposed to do, and he executed what he needed to do to get to that phase. And for a lot of us, we don't want to do the caterpillar phase, but then we want to be the butterfly.
Right. But in what you're saying is so true, because we talk about that work, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was also a time where obviously that caterpillar, while it's in the cocoon, is shut off.
Yep.
It's shut off from a lot of things. It's shut off from a lot of people. It's shut off from a lot of distractions. It's shut off from a lot of external forces, right? These are some of the situations that I think a lot of people take for granted, right? You need that personal time. You need to cut off some of the distractions, whether it be social media, whether it be negative friends, whether it be relationships that aren't beneficial, right? Whatever that is, you're going to need some personal time, that alone time. Sometimes it's going to be painful. Sometimes it's going to be hard because you want to reach out, you want to go hang out with people, but that might not be your time at that time. That might be your time for reflection, that time to work on yourself, that time to really, hey, I don't need to be in this type of relationship right now. All right. Maybe later on you might be able to do that. But no, right now I need to work on me. All right. Even with people who are married, it's okay for you to have some alone time. You work with couples sometimes and they think it's kind of like a sin. No, I think it's okay for a human being to have some alone time. I need to be able to process what just happened. I might
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to process my day. I need 30 minutes to an hour by myself. I'm going to get back with you, but let me get this time to gather my mind together, to be able to reflect, and to be able to work on myself. Maybe I need every morning to get up, go listen to a self-help book. Maybe I need some time to go pray. I need some alone time. So I am in that changing state where I'm actively working on myself to be the better version of myself, right? Um, and I think people take it personal when you tell them that you need some alone time, or you tell them that, hey, I'm sorry, I can't go out tonight because I'm going to stay home. I really need to catch up on some rest, or I need to actually spend some time finishing this book I've been reading. People take it personal, but so what? Because if they truly love you, they're going to want to see you develop, evolve,
Mm-hmm.
be better, be a better version of yourself, be that butterfly that RJ was saying after it transforms, right? I want someone to get to their best them, because in turn, if they're their best version of themselves, right? I'm gonna want to change. I'm gonna want to be better. I need people around me who are evolving. I need people around me who are successful. And that's going to motivate me. I'm not going to look at it like, oh, that person's leaving me or that person don't need me no more. I'm going to look at it as that person's evolving, and it makes me want to be one step better. It makes me
Well,
want to actually work on myself. When, I had a time where I was a part of a church in Richmond, and it was good serving, because I never served in a church before, really. Like, you know what I mean? I wasn't really into that. I worked as an usher, and I would usher, and I would help with the kids ministry, and I would do certain things. And the kids were awesome, man. In Richmond had some hoods. Let me tell you, it had some stuff, but we would help some of the kids, man. You laughing, but it was really good to be able to help some of the kids that were from a lower socioeconomic class of children and families. You know what I mean? It was good to help them. It was so funny because some of the kids, they were wild, and, they'd be cursing and stuff like that. But when they got around us, we would, me, a few other people, a few young brothers, man, that would go pick them up for Wednesday night services and stuff. We would try to instill good things and be good influences on them, right? So one of the little girls, it was hilarious because I was having an argument with one of the other brothers who was with me, and I cursed, and she was like, "Oh my God!" She's like, "Hey, Mr. Franklin," she said, "You just said a bad word." I said, "Oh Lord," and it caught me, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm sorry," because she made me be accountable. And I remember that time in my life, because I did it for 2 years. I was cursing less. No smoking cigarettes, no doing any of those type of things that I used to fall victim to before, and I was taking time to work on myself. And I had to be accountable because I had these little kids I was ministering to, right? Those things right there. Now that I don't do them anymore, I look back, I said, man, I was evolving. I was changing. I regressed when I stopped doing that. And I had to look at myself, man, and I curse less now, because I'm a little more aware than that 10 years ago. But at the same time, when I was around people who were doing the right things, when I surrounded myself around people who were living differently, a lot of some of these behaviors just actually started to, because I wanted to do better. I was cognizant of some of my negative behaviors, right? So when they would come up, I tried hard to not do those things. I put forth the effort to not do a lot of those negative things when I was around people who were positive. So that's why it's good that if you have a partner who's evolving, a partner that wants to change, they're going to help you in turn if they truly love you. You get what I'm saying?
for sure. I think that, like what, you know, something that came to my mind when we were just like when you were expanding on what I had said just a little while ago about the caterpillar. When it's in the cocoon, it goes through what, like what we always talk about, that season separation.
Yeah.
We all as human beings at some point in time will have to go through a season separation. And separation, like for a lot of us, we think that separation, it has like a negative connotation, because we think that separating means I'm cutting everybody off. Um, a lot of times we have to go through that season separation to kind of separate ourselves from other people and outside influences that may be being a distraction from where we're supposed to be.
Right.
And a lot of times, in taking a break, taking a pause, taking a knee, calling a timeout,
Yeah.
um, it allows us to kind of mentally and emotionally reset and kind of get our bearings back. I think that we all, at times, when you are looking to achieve goals, you will need to go through a season separation. You'll need to kind of take a pause from a lot of different things, a lot of people, just to kind of emotionally prepare yourself for for the change that is about to occur in your life.
Right.
For that elevation that's about to occur in your life. And it's not a bad thing to be able to separate yourself from others and from different things. But again, during this season of separation, there should be some honest and earnest contemplation that occurs, in order to help to facilitate, because a lot of things start here. Before it goes anywhere else, it starts
It's
here.
mental. It's mental.
It's mental. It's mental and it's emotional. So to mentally and emotionally prepare yourself is going to prepare you physically. For me, if I can prepare myself mentally and emotionally for something, things don't bother me.
Right.
Things like pain, things like uncomfortability, it doesn't bother me because I've already overcome it in here. And so for a lot of us, when we are looking to go through that season of change and development, there's going to be a season of separation that proceeds it. Because again, that is what is going to prepare you and steel you for that season of growth and that season of development. Right. And the things that you tend to surround yourself, once you've had time to kind of separate yourself from it, you'll start to realize that I didn't really need it in the first place.
Yeah.
It had no place in my life in the first place. And then the people that were for you and that truly are for you, they will understand that, hey, you needed that season of separation. Right. And they will applaud you for the growth and the development that you are making. Because when you start to grow and you start to evolve and you start to, stop fearing failure, you stop fearing abandonment, rejection, not achieving, life has a different feel to it. The vibe is different. Life kind of gets out of your way, and you'll start to see growth. You'll start to experience growth. So much so that other people will start to see it in you.
Yes.
Like you won't even have to say like, I'm losing weight, because people start to see that you're losing weight.
Right. Yeah. It'll manifest anyway.
Your attitude will be different. Your swag will be different.
Right.
Like people will, like they will recognize the mental, the emotional growth that comes through conversation with you, because your thought process changes. Your belief system changes, because that, like I said, when you start to change, everything about you starts to change. You physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, all of you changes. Holistically, you change when you start to cut bad habits out of your life. Right. And again, the bad habits will only remain present if you allow them to remain present.
Yes. It's funny. We're coming to the end. Back in the day, one of my favorite parts of the Snoop Dogg, what was it, Gin and Juice video. At the end of the video, I believe it's either Gin and Juice or one of them. At the end of the video, his uncle or whatever's in there, and he was like talking to the aunt, and the aunt was like, man, you drink too much when you go to these parties. And he was like, nah, man, you put me around JB. When I get around JB, I drink too much, right? Mm-hmm. He's actively blaming somebody else for making him drink a lot, right? Those are the type of things that I've looked at in myself. Like, I can't blame anybody for some of the things that happened to me, because at the same time, like I said, man, life happens. Life is hard. It's difficult. All right. And I have to accept that I played a part in most of these things. I played an active role in allowing a lot of these things to keep transpiring in my life. I played an active role in it. And it's up to me, all right, to play an active role in changing these cycles, changing these habits, changing some of the outcomes. It's up to me. I don't have to let people influence me. There's no reason why. If I know I go around someone and they always offer me a joint or they always offer me a drink, I can always say no. I make a conscious decision to do those things, right? Especially if I know I don't know how to act once I do those things. You know what I mean? I know I'm no longer productive if I'm doing those things, right? Whether it be of a sexual nature, people are like, well, no, that woman at that job, man, she manipulated me, man, or that guy, man, he flirted with me first. Regardless, it's up to you. We make a conscious decision, all right, to allow certain things to influence us. If we want to change, be the change. You start making the active decisions to influence your life the way you want it to go. I know we're at the end, and I'm gonna let RJ close, but I just want you guys to know, like, once I became an active participant in my life, and I started participating and making rational decisions, and I started really sitting back and looking at some of my behaviors, I was able to change them. I was able to run an interference, say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not what I want to do. And that's when life stopped in my brain. Life stopped doing things to me, and I started making things happen. And I was no longer the victim at that point once I started recognizing those things.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. Um, for for me, I think the only thing that I have left to share is be the butterfly. Be the caterpillar that becomes the butterfly. Put forth the effort, go through that phase of development, contemplation of, and if necessary, a season of separation to put forth the time and energy that you need to be able to be the best version of yourself going into this new year. With the new year, that is an opportunity to be a new version of yourself.
Right.
And in accepting that challenge of being a new version of yourself, there comes effort, there comes consistency, there comes discipline that you have to put forth in order to achieve that goal of a new year, new self.
Yes.
So this is where we're going to stop the conversation. This is Try Not to Overthink It signing out. I'm RJ,
I'm Khalil.
and we will catch you in the next episode. If you like the conversation, we can be found on YouTube at Try Not to Overthink It. We can also be found pretty much everywhere that you can listen to an audio file. So Apple Podcast, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, Audible. If you prefer to listen to the conversation instead of watch the conversation, I don't know why you prefer to listen to it instead of watch it, because we're very good looking men. But if you prefer to listen to the conversation, we can be found on those platforms. If you prefer to watch the episode to be able to look at our beautiful faces, we can be found on YouTube. If you happen to stop by the channel, we ask that you like, share, subscribe, participate in the conversations,
Yes.
comment. Because again, we want to expand on these conversations and be able to get your input as well. So we're signing out, and we will catch you in the next episode. Later.